Story 1. This happened about 5 years ago when I was around 16 or 17 years old. I always enjoyed walking, and I would spend at least an hour a day walking the roads around where I lived. And one day when I was out doing my normal route and walking down the street that my house was on, I took a ride out onto the main street, following it until I got to the end. There, I would cross a crosswalk and retrace my steps to go home. However, on this particular day, I was about 20 feet from where I would leave the main road on my journey back home. I had my headphones in and was blasting music. As always, it can be a bad habit, as I'm a young female that has been in some sketchy situations whilst out on my walks. But since it was daylight and the roads were pretty busy, I figured I was safe. But man, was I ever off with that assumption. As I was about to pass the entrance of a side street before leaving the main road, a black Ford F-150 pulled up, and a man stopped and gestured for me to walk in front of him. So I did. I turned on my music, taking out my headphones. As I looked to see the man in black Ford would still stop at the entrance of the side road, I looked at him puzzled, trying to figure out if he was talking to me. So I pointed out myself, and he grinned, nodding. "What a beautiful girl like you are doing here?" he asked. I laughed awkwardly. "Walking," I replied, seeing as the answer should have been obvious. "It's a beautiful day for that," he commented, just seeming to make small talk. "Yeah," I stated before going to turn around and continue my route home. "Wait," the man called and stopped and turned around, just trying to be polite. And even though the encounter was odd, I didn't see too many red flags. Yet the man then went off, saying things such as, "You're so beautiful. You know, you have a really nice body. This hot weather is nice for a hot girl." I grew incredibly uncomfortable at this point, seeing as this man had to be in his mid-40s. He had a bit of receding hairline, with black hair, and a nose with protruding bridge blue eyes that was surrounded by slight wrinkles, and was dressed in a dress shirt. So I instantly brought my aid, saying, "I'm a minor. There have been multiple times I have been mistaken for being older than I was, and I was hoping," saying, this would get this fully grown adult ass man to back off. But he didn't. "Oh, that's okay. Come on, sweetheart. Get in the truck." And that's when I started panicking. Stranger danger. I laughed nervously, looking at the cars around me to see if anyone was noticing what was happening, but nobody did. "No, that's fine. My house isn't far," I said. "No, really. Get in the truck. I'll bring you home," he insisted. "No, I repeat it. Come on, just get in here with me," he called as I turned and started walking away, and I was hoping he'd just drive off somewhere else, but he didn't. Instead, he drove extremely slowly and followed me, complimenting me and trying to pressure me into this truck. I thought fast for multiple options for different scenarios, but I chose one simple one. I pulled out my phone while still walking and lifted it up to my ear, pretending too loudly to answer her call. "Hey, Dad." "Yeah, no, I'm just on the Mill Street. I'll be home about in 10 minutes. I started pretending to listen to a reply. "Okay, you're outside waiting for me." "Awesome. Yeah, we can do that when I get back. Love you." After you heard me say that, he took off tires, screeching, and I ran back home. I made it within about 6 minutes, actually calling my dad on the way, and he made a call to the police, who showed up shortly after and took my statement. And the description of that man, it turned out that there there was a man on the loose in my area who was exposing himself to minors and trying to pick them up for sexual acts, but they never actually found out exactly who it was. So creepy, man. Black Ford F-150. Let's not read again. Story 2. This happened about a year ago. There were so many terrible factors working against me that night. I'm astounded I got away unscathed, at least physically. This all begins when I'm in my friend's apartment, who lives in a really rough part of town. In a series of poor decisions that night, I decided to get belligerently drunk and take a few pills of God knows what. Safe to say, after a solid night of partying, around 4 a.m., I was not in the right state of mind. My drug-addled brain decided that instead of staying at my friend's apartment like I normally would, I wanted to Uber back to my own apartment. My friend's apartment had two separate exits to the building, one in the back, an unlit parking lot, and one facing the street. They had two sets of keys for each door, and I only had keys to the one in the back. Since my Uber would obviously arrive on the street, I exited this way when the driver was supposed to arrive. Looking back, standing outside that apartment, I realized I looked like the easiest target on the planet. I'm a small, petite female in my early 20s and could hardly stay upright. I'm using a street lamp to prop myself up and not doing a good job at either. The light was basically a beacon for any nearby predator, saying, "Come get me." I'm not paying attention to my surroundings at all in this state, despite the fact that there is literally a bullet hole in the front door I just came out of. Not good. I remember checking to see when my ride was arriving and was only able to pick out that it was a black sedan. Soon after stepping outside, a black sedan pulls up to the curb and starts rolling down the windows. So I step forward. Before this man even spoke, I could feel something was wrong. He had an expression like he was tearing me apart with just his eyes. After seeing that look, it gave me a new meaning to the word predator to describe a criminal, because I then knew what it felt like to be prey. He basically barks at me, "I'm your Uber driver." This was the second red flag that somehow made its way through my brain. Normally, Uber drivers just roll down the window and say your name, or any version of that, but always include your name. I think I just stared at him for a second, my brain slowly piecing together the situation I was potentially in. I asked him, "What's my name?" He immediately is enraged and starts screaming about how he doesn't have time for this and just to get in the effing car, etc., etc. I don't think I've ever been sobered up so fast in my life. I'm completely panicking. Obviously, this wasn't my Uber. Quickly checking the license plate, I immediately see it's not a match. Meanwhile, this guy is still screaming at me, and I have absolutely no idea what to do. If I bolt in either direction, this guy could easily outrun me or even have a weapon. I'm also pretty sure at this point that if he's trying to nab a random girl off the street, he must have a weapon of some sort. I can't run back into the apartment door right behind me, since it locks behind you, and I don't have the key nor the time to unlock it. Running towards the back door would do nothing as well. And as he's idling right by the mouth of the driveway towards the back parking lot, again I would have to take time to find the right keys and get in. If I screamed, I'm not exactly in the type of neighborhood where someone would try to be a vigilante, and I can still hear the music radiating from my friend's third floor apartment. I knew they wouldn't hear me. It's also 4 a.m., and absolutely no one is around. People talk a lot about how they either sprint into action or freeze. but I felt incapable of doing either. It was the absolute worst feeling I've ever felt in my life. Everything in me wanted to run, but I felt that if I did, it would be the end of me. But if I kept standing there, staring in shock at the screaming man, the result would be the same. From when he started screaming at me to this point, I'm guessing only 20 seconds had passed. Just as he's looking like he's getting ready to get out of the car, another black sedan pulls up right behind him. Checking the license plate as quickly as I can, I realize it's my actual Uber, and I make a full sprint to the car. Really, it was only like 6 steps, and I throw myself in, screaming at my real Uber driver, "What's my name? That man's trying to kidnap me." If I was in his Uber driver's position, I think I would be too shocked to react as quickly as he did. But my dude flew out of there. He offered to call the cops for me, which I declined and now regret, and then walked me to the front door of my apartment, ensuring I got in safely. Truly, an incredible human being. You can rest easy, knowing he got the fastest tip my college student bank account would allow for, although he deserved much, much more. Story 3. This happened when I was 15, male, 5'5", and 132 pounds. I was a wrestler, so I always knew my exact weight and kept myself extremely lean, but still had a fairly muscular build. I lived in a small town of about 50,000 to 60,000 people. In my off season, I did whatever I could to stay active outdoors. I had a friend, we'll call him Blaze, who was really into disc golf and always asked me to come play with him and smoke a doobie while we were in the most secluded parts of the course. Blaze was a couple of years older than me, but no bigger, just not the greatest influence on me at the time. This small town only had 2 disc golf courses, one at a very public park near a middle school, and one at the edge of town in an older, much bigger park. Obviously, we weren't smoking for everyone to see. Little did I know, this park happened to be my town's hotspot for people meeting and hooking up in the parking lot. I live in the Midwest, so the crowd wasn't young, stylish, pretty guys. It was mostly guys aged 30 to 50, pretty big, bulky, and country looking. We finished the course, and the joint, walked out of the woods, anything but sober. We typically chilled in the grass or played catch after we finished up until Blay was more normal and ready to drive back. We noticed that there were way more cars in the parking lot than when we got there, and a lot of older guys sitting on trunks of their cars or on tailgates, loosely grouped together. This very large, hairy man in a tank top and his tall, thin friend, dressed like a biker gang member, started to do the wolf whistle toward me and Blaze. I got pretty uncomfortable, not because a man whistled at me, but because we had to walk in their direction, and I could feel the eyes of way more guys on me than I wanted. For a testosterone-filled, weight room junkie teenager, I did not feel very safe here. Knowing that there were at least 30 guys in this group, I could see in my peripheral vision that a very large portion were eyeing us closely as we walked toward the parking lot. I'll make it clear that I'm not a fighter, and I would never intend to hurt anyone aside from self-defense. But I was definitely confident in myself to hold someone off. We were just so outnumbered and not in a sober state of mind, so anxiety made things much worse. A couple of them said some gross catcall things, more whistles, and then woo noises that rednecks make when they're excited or instigating, similar to woo, but if Eric Cartman screeched it. I think they had the idea that we were some people who met online and were coming to meet up. Being high, I didn't care what was going on. I just wanted to be safe and not the center of attention. As we got closer, the big, hairy man who did the first wolf whistle said something like, "You think you can handle this?" I just mumbled, "No thanks," and tried to keep walking. He yelled back, "Who was that boy?" To which I just clearly replied, "No thanks, not into it." He seemed offended and angry, said, "Not into what?" I said I was sorry, I'm not gay, and he seemed to be offended by that word. Again, he asked me to repeat myself in a very aggressive tone, so I corrected myself and said, "I'm just not into guys." Things escalated from here very quickly. The man stepped forward from leaning against the truck and grabbed my wrist. He said, "Well, we can fix that real quick." Don't get excited. I didn't do some cool fight move to attack, just a simple wrist roll, and using that momentum, a quick push of the elbow to turn him around so that he would have his back to me and I could get by without him. He responded, "Touch me like that again, and we'll get the both of you." Another guy made his way over to Blaze, who is much less calm and more of a shrill type of stunner than I was. I can only describe what he did as one of those kicks or side steps off of a wall, but to that guy's chest and abdomen. He started to run and yell, "F off," as loud as possible. Very quickly, bunches of guys began to stand up from their seats on the outside of their cars and motion in our direction. I started booking it for the car too, and Mr. Skinny Biker type man was running right after us. Thank God it was just him running, and not multiple guys chasing us, or the story might be different. I was faster than Blaze, so I got ahead of him and pictured us running across the parking lot to his truck that was facing us, backing into the stall. I got around to the passenger side quickly, with Blaze still about 100 feet from the truck. He tried to cut to the right and make it to the driver's side, but the skinny guy cut him off and sent him to the left, to the passenger side. I ran around the back of the truck as fast as I could to the driver door, and Blaze slid his key around the roof towards me. I hopped in, well aware that I did not want to be driving right now in this state of mind, much less in such a crazy situation, and even more so in someone else's vehicle. Still, without thinking, I started the truck and skirted out of the parking lot, while Skinny banged on the bed of the truck chasing us. But that wasn't the end. A truck and a car were on the way right behind me. Skinny jumped into the car that was in the back, and the chase began. Terrified and still high, I cut through the grass in the park to get to the main road more quickly, thinking I would lose them that way. These guys raced over the speed bumps and around the bends in the park road right up to the main road, and they were driving so fast I would have gotten T-boned if I didn't smash the pedal to the floor at the same time. I'm so stressed I started silently crying while driving, thinking of how horrible the possibility could be. Contact lens wearers know that when your eyes are dry from the smoke, then they rapidly get moist. Contacts tend to drift a bit until they find their place again. This is definitely not ideal for someone with awful vision driving twice the speed limit down the road in the middle of town. So I started turning down residential streets and weaving in and out, being tapped on the shoulder by Blay to keep my speed up because the two were still on our rear bumper. I even made some risky U-turns that they followed right along. This chase lasted over 10 minutes of me frantically driving through main streets, residential back alleys, and everything I could try to get away. I was so scared. The best case scenario, ended up not getting pulled over, and myself obtaining a permanent record for DUI by the ripe age of 15. Luckily, a stroke of luck and surprisingly quick reflexes came to my aid. Blaze yelled, "Cop," and pointed to a parking lot to our left where there were police cruisers, probably just waiting to catch someone speeding or running red lights on the semi busy road we ended up on. I whipped into the parking lot and parked a couple of stalls down from the cop. The truck prepared to turn, but stopped in the middle of the road so quickly once they realized what was going on that the car following had to swerve and pop a curb, catching the officer's attention. He backed out, and the two vehicles split different ways and were out of sight before he got out of the parking lot. We never went back to that park any time other than the mornings after that. So thankfully, nothing bad came out of the incident, and we made it out completely unscathed. No idea what they would have done, but people engaging teenagers in a car chase could not have had good intentions in mind. It was my first time in my life being harassed like that, too. You would think being in a car chase might be fun or exciting, but I just felt so powerless and like I had no control, like nothing I could do would both get these guys away from us and simultaneously not get me arrested